Could stress be the reason why you don't feel well or have unexplainable symptoms? The answer to that is, I think, obvious. It's yes. I mean, all of us understand that stress is related to different diseases and unexplainable symptoms and illnesses. However, it's really a little more complicated than that, because rarely, if ever, is stress alone the cause of your condition. Matter of fact, on this video, I kind of want to give you an explanation of that and how stress can really be a part of some of these unexplainable conditions and illnesses, and perhaps why you don't feel well. But I also want to give you some answers, some what you can do about it. Look, I can't jump into the video screen into your life and take your stress away. But I can show you what you can do to adapt to the stress. See, ultimately, that's the key. I can't take your stress away, but the trick is getting your body to adapt to the stress. Look, every one of us have stress, and I'll say this. A saying that I love to teach my patients, and my doctors is this: how you view your world is how your world becomes around you. Something that I've learned in my life, because unfortunately I am one of those people who have had a lot of bad circumstances and a lot of stress. However, one thing that I really hold on to is something that's in the Bible. It's Romans 8:28 that says, God works all things out for good for those he loves. And you know what? I can tell you firsthand that he absolutely does. Matter of fact, my own sickness is a testimony to that. Because without my sickness, I definitely would not be able to relate and identify with the patients, the very sick patients that I treat. I definitely wouldn't be able to speak from stage or even videos like this, with the passion that I have. And I sure did learn a lot in that time. And I can look back in my life at the most stressful times and really understand that God did the most and taught me the most in those times. So really it is how we view things is how our world, turns out around us. And I'm a strong believer in that. However, look, we all do have stress, and I don't want to minimize anybody's stress who's watching this video, because I think some of us has greater stress than others. There's no doubt about that. However, why doesn't everybody get sick? As a matter of fact, I know you have people in your life, and so do I, that you can look at and say, my gosh, they have so much stress in their life, yet they seem to be doing just fine. See, the key is not the stress, but it's how you adapt to it. I kind of want to give you an understanding of what stress does and why it does make us sick. You've heard me in some of my past videos talk about cellular inflammation, and really inflammation is the cause of the majority of diseases today, whether it's heart disease, cancer, autism, we can go on and on. Stress can drive something in your body called oxidative stress. Oxidative stress leads to inflammation, and it leads to your cell not functioning the way it should. That's just one really way that stress can drive a certain disease process. But really it also can affect certain organs in the body, like your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are needed to adapt to stress. It releases a hormone called cortisol, which goes up in times of stress. The problem is this: when you get a lot of chronic stress, the body can start to malfunction, and the cortisol can start to cause other hormones to malfunction. And then all of a sudden you get kind of stuck in that paradigm, or at least stuck in that hormonal decline, if you will. And then all of a sudden you go to your doctor, and the doctor starts giving you, oh, it's just stress, and you leave there with maybe perhaps 4 medications, and some which are psychotropic drugs, which we could do a whole show on that. But the bottom line is, ultimately you have to get to the true cause, and typically it's what's really going wrong in the cell. I do want to give one little explanation of what I mean by that. I talked about the adrenal glands and stress. One of the things that I see in many people, and in another video I'm going to talk about the thyroid, because the thyroid, I see so many people today with really undiagnosed thyroid conditions. So they have a lot of unexplainable illnesses, whether it's unexplained weight gain, can't sleep, other hormone problems, not adapting to stress, cold body temperature, losing their hair, dry skin. I mean, I can go on, constipation, hot flashes. Believe it or not, all those symptoms I mentioned actually can be related to your thyroid. Now, how does stress and your adrenal glands relate to your thyroid? I talked about inflammation and all these things, but there is an explanation. Look, during times of stress, your body, I said, produces a hormone called cortisol. It raises the cortisol to adapt to the stress. Well, in that time, your body wants to conserve energy. Matter of fact, it does that even in times of illness. So even in times of stress like illness and even physical stress, the body will really raise up the cortisol, and that causes something called reverse T3. Now, look, your thyroid produces T4 hormone and T3 hormone. Now follow me, I don't want to lose you here. T4 hormone needs to be converted into active hormone T3. I'm going to draw this for you because I think it's better drawn, and you can have a visual. T3, if this is your cell, T3 has to combine or meet up with these receptors. I hope you can see that. So T3 hormone from your thyroid comes to your cellular level. So now we're out here in the body somewhere, right? Okay, and this T3, remember I said it has to first be T4, that converts to T3, but T3 is what gets in the cell and it tells your DNA what to do. And that's how you have energy, you can think clear, you feel good. Well, in times of stress, the body wants to conserve its energy, so it wants to stop the T3 from getting in the cell. It has a method to do that. So what happens is the T4 actually starts to be converted into something called RT3, reverse T3. It's kind of like a key, it's an opposite. Well, reverse T3 starts to combine to these hormone receptors and it blocks the T3. So now the T3 doesn't get in the cell. However, the problem is when the stress becomes chronic and you match it with other stresses like chemical stress, perhaps another physical stress, and I'm going to explain because I call that the perfect storm. Now what happens is your body gets stuck in this hormonal cascade, if you will. And your body now is shuttling more of the T4, shunting it over into this reverse T3. And now you go to your doctor, you don't feel well, okay? You know you're stressed out. And he measures all your blood work. And unfortunately, they all look normal. Because the problem is that you can't get the T3 in because your body's literally blocking it to adapt to the stress. The problem is you're stuck in this stress mechanism. So now you're on what we call reverse T3 dominance. How many doctors out there are actually running reverse T3? Well, we run it, no doubt about it, and your doctor should be running it as well. You know, I can't tell you how many people also have autoimmune conditions where their body's attacking its thyroid. And most, unfortunately, doctors treat that incorrectly. Matter of fact, in this condition, most people end up on T4 hormone, whether it's Synthroid or another T4 thyroxine hormone. And the problem is this: once this is happening, you can take all the T4 you want. Matter of fact, most of it's being converted into more T3, blocking the T3 from getting in the cell. You see the problem? So again, that's just one example of how stress can cause a thyroid condition and all these unexplainable symptoms. Stress can also raise cortisol. When cortisol is raised, you're in fat storing mode. And now, look, double whammy for weight gain. Number one, your cortisol is staying up and now you're storing fat. Oh, it drives insulin up, which stores fat. Oh, and now your thyroid gland, which you need to stay thin with, right? The T3 not getting in the cell is blocked because it's shunting over to reverse T3, blocking the receptor, and your blood work looks normal. Very frustrating situation, you know, and it's so easy to fix too. But look, ultimately it's this. I said that I wanted to show you what the perfect storm actually looks like and why people are getting sick. And then I want to give you a solution. I don't want to just give you this information and, let you go on your way. This is what I call the perfect storm. In situations of the perfect storm, I treat very sick patients from all over the world. I hear the same stories. Look, all of a sudden, my husband died, or this stress came into my life, and now all these symptoms started. It's not just the stress. You start to also, years and years of accumulating toxins in your life. That's the C here, the chemical stress. And now you combine it with the emotional stress, and now you trigger your gene called an epigenetic trigger, where all of a sudden a gene that you had from mom, dad, whatever, gets triggered of susceptibility, and now you end up with an illness. The chemicals, the emotional stress in the gene, all of a sudden, catastrophic storm. You remember the movie, The Perfect Storm? You had 3 weather fronts come together, right? And when these 3 weather fronts came together, and it happened maybe 1 in 100 years, you had this catastrophic storm that occurred. But it had to be these 3 weather fronts. So my point is this: it's typically not just the stress. Your body doesn't know the difference, and follow me here. Your body doesn't know the difference between chemical stress, emotional stress, or physical stress. Matter of fact, we can measure the same stressors in the body and hormones and know that it reacts exactly the same. But it's a combination of these stressors that finally puts us in this chronic stress situation. And I just taught you how that affects your adrenal glands and how that also affects your thyroid. So look, I could do a whole lecture on this, but I do want to give you some really important things that you can do. Matter of fact, if you go to my website, there's an adrenal product. During stressful times, you want to protect these adrenal glands that help you adapt to stress. There's a product called GA. I'll write it. Capital G, little a. It's from a company called Systemic Formulas. So if you go shop online, you'll see Systemic Formulas. and put in punch in GA. Another area that I like to support is your genes. I said that a lot of these genes of susceptibility get triggered. And it's called an epigenetic or epigenome. So your genes alone don't make you sick. I had high blood pressure in 9th grade. They weren't going to let me on the wrestling team. My mother always had high blood pressure. She was on medication her whole life, and yet she ended up with multiple strokes. So now, they weren't going to let me on the wrestling team. I had high blood pressure. Obviously, I got my mother's bad gene, and it was triggered. It was definitely triggered. However, I'm approaching 50 now. I'm not there yet, and almost, but I'm approaching 50 now, and yet I don't have high blood pressure. I'm not on medication. Obviously, it took me some years, but I turned off that gene of susceptibility. During times of stress, we know that we can trigger, remember the perfect storm, genetics was one of those storm clouds. The chemicals can trigger it, the stress can trigger it. It's the combination typically that triggers the gene. We want to protect our genes during times of stress. That's a product that I like to put my patients on called Moors. The same company, Systemic Formulas. Moors is something called a methyl donor. It provides methyl donors. Methyl donors are things that you actually need to use to adapt to stress. You need methyl donors to trigger or to activate hormones like cortisol that you need to use for stress, and adrenaline. So you need these methyl donors, but in times of stress you get depleted, which can lead to other diseases, even weight gain. So that's another product I like to do. And one more, I do like to support the thyroid. So I like to give GF, which is their thyroid product. And yet there is one more thing that I'll tell you that you need to do, especially times of stress, and it is control your sugar intake. And that even means your grains, because grains are sugar. So go watch my other videos and understand that. But look, glucose up, insulin up, cortisol up, you can get stuck in a chronic situation that affects your adrenals and your thyroid. Look, I know this will help, but you have to take action and actually do it. Look at your circumstances as a positive, not a negative. Take these products during times of stress especially, and protect those chemicals and hormones in those glands that God gave us in our body that really help us adapt to stress. The key is not avoiding stress, because either you're in a stressful time, you're coming out of one, or heading for another one. So we can't avoid them, but we can actually help our body adapt to the stress. And that's the key to avoiding disease and stress-related symptoms. So I know it's going to help, but go ahead and do it. Thank you.